free to interweave any of your musical selections into our sporting chat, because there's a little known project from 50 Cent called Power of the Dollar. And I've been listening to it. And I actually listened to it while I was writing my Blackcaps versus Sri Lanka second test debrief. So it got me like pretty riled up. I had no issues saying the Blackcaps suck. And I had no issues saying New Zealand cricket kind of sucks right now. But it was the 50 Cent Power of the Dollar mixtape, or a bit of an album, that really got me in the zone to just fire up and kind of just rip into the Blackcaps. So if you do enjoy that early 50 Cent, because a lot of people say, you know, 50 Cent, Get Rich or Die Trying was a banger. And I think it was a banger. But he had a release prior to that. So Get Rich or Die Trying, which was like Indie Club, all that stuff, that was in 2003. But in 2000, I think we're talking 2000 here. Yes, in September 2000, he released Power of the Dollar. But he was like shot 9 times soon after that. So there was some issues with the release. But that is, I think that's 50 Cent at his best. So if you love 50 Cent, or that early 50 Cent, make sure you check out Power of the Dollar. Just search that up on YouTube. It will pop up. And this was in 2000. He's got like a couple nice features here. Bun B, Destiny's Child appeared, Noriega. So he was moving and grooving in New York prior to the release of Get Rich or Die Trying. But that's just a little bit of music for the freaks out there. And obviously it's pretty ruthless New York kind of hip hop. So you just be aware, you know, it's 50 Cent, you got to know what you're getting into there. Point being, that got me in the zone to just rip into the Blackcaps. But the thing that I want to set up and get your opinion on is, this isn't a moment to break down individuals. Kind of like, in a way, like Devon Conway scored runs, Mitchell Santner scored runs in the second innings, Tom Blundell scored runs, so they fixed all their form, right? Like everything's good there. Obviously, that is far more confusing and nuanced than that. But it also brushes aside the biggest issue. And then, like, you can say Tim Southee sucks as a captain. Gary Stead sucks as a coach. Anything individual with the Blackcaps team right now, I appreciate that you can identify that as a observation of where the Blackcaps are at. But the Blackcaps have lost 4 tests in a row. Either side of the 2 tests they lost to Australia and 2 tests they lost in Sri Lanka, they had a horrible T20 World Cup. During this period, the White Ferns have lost 10 T20s in a row. And over the last 5 years, like, the White Ferns have sucked. We've just been a full steak and cheese pie. The White Ferns have sucked over the last 5 years in both formats. So whatever you're thinking about the Blackcaps, the White Ferns are worse in both formats than the Blackcaps are in their 3 formats. But if we narrow it down to the last 2 weeks, we've got 2 losses for the Blackcaps in Sri Lanka. We've got 3 losses for the White Ferns in Australia. And shout out to them, the New Zealand development woman. They are preparing to start the one-day section of their tri-series against Australia under-19s and Sri Lanka under-19s. But in the T20 section of that tri-series, they lost all 4 games. So over the last 2 weeks, New Zealand cricket teams have gone 0-9. That is New Zealand cricket right now. And I do have a specific observation about the Blackcaps where I think we can come up with our own term. Like, you know how Americans will say, oh, he's lost his fastball. Like, the Blackcaps, I think their mind powers the culture, the tactics, the planning, the preparation. That was them bowling 145 k's an hour with nibble. Now they're just 125k dibbly dobblers. Like, they have lost their tactical fastball, let alone the skill fastballs, let alone the form slumps that we know are happening. Because what happened between these two tests in Sri Lanka, they lost the first test, they were kind of competitive, that was all right. And then they selected the same team, conceded 600 runs for 5 wickets, declared, and scored 88 runs. We've seen, like, in our lifetimes, we've seen some terrible Blackcaps phases, right? And over the last 5 years, I've seen some terrible White Ferns phases. Losing a test, selecting the same team, conceding 600 runs declared and only taking 5 wickets, then scoring 88 runs yourself, has to be one of the worst Blackcaps phases that I can remember. And I don't like saying that because I'm probably the most optimistic, the most positive person about the Blackcaps. But yes, we know the bowling attack might not be as sharp as it once was. We know there are some heavy-duty form slumps where I think a lot of these batters might have got a bit too big for their boots. Because I think a few of them started to think of themselves as big donnies in international cricket. And that's all right when you're averaging over 50. When you enter Test cricket, you're averaging over 50. And this is a reminder of the true essence of being humbled. Because these lads weren't humbled by awards. Oh, I'm very humbled to win this award. They were humbled by being kind of shitty. And I think a lot of these Blackcaps players have been humbled by their performances. However, being humbled and the 3 stages of Blackcaps shenanigans, selecting the same team, conceding 600 runs declared, scoring 88 runs, like, that is 3 stages of Blackcap shenanigans. Like, all of those things suck, and they're horrible to think about. But they merely fit into the wider theme of New Zealand cricket right now. And the thing that I framed my second test debrief with was that the New Zealand cricket identity is now losing. It's not that they are losing their identity. No, their identity is losing. They're 0-9 over the last 2 weeks. The Blackcaps had a horrible T20 World Cup. The Blackcaps have lost 4 tests in a row. The White Ferns aren't even a factor in international cricket right now. And who knows, they might turn it around to the T20 World Cup. We'll wait and see about that. But New Zealand cricket, they were doing some nice high-performance things. And I've tried to fight this off. Like, I've tried to believe in what New Zealand cricket are doing. Right now, their identity is just losing. Just losing cricket games, losing moments, losing wickets. Their like the Blackcaps' identity was great fielding, tactics, planning, preparation, team culture. That helped them overcome the fact that New Zealand's a tiny country. We shouldn't even be competing on the global stage in cricket the way we do. But some intangibles, some mana, some Kiwi things help them compete at the highest possible level. The Blackcaps haven't just lost all that because tactically they were terrible. They selected the same team and conceded 600 runs and then were all out for 88. Fielding, they were terrible. Like, Sri Lanka scored 600 runs because the Blackcaps sucked at fielding. Obviously not just that, but they created opportunities and those opportunities weren't taken. So the Blackcaps' identity is no longer true blue Kiwi. But the worst thing is the identity of New Zealand cricket right now is just straight up and down, full steak and cheese, losing.
Yeah, and before I dig further into that, just to highlight that some more, like 602 for five declared, 88 all out. That is a first innings deficit of 514. That's not just bad. That is the fifth worst first innings deficit in the history of Test cricket. The fifth worst. Like, that's over a century of cricket, and that's the fifth worst one. The worst ever was from 1938. England somehow had a 702 run lead ahead of Australia there. The third worst of all time was from 2002 when the Blackcaps played in Pakistan, and Pakistan were all out for 643 and the Blackcaps were rolled for 73. So it's not the Blackcaps' worst, but it's pretty bad. It's the fifth worst first innings lead in the history of Test cricket, and that alone should be reason to be like pretty terrified of the direction that they're heading in. Like, this was worse than 45 all out when Brendan McCullum was starting off in South Africa as captain. You remember that? Because at least that was only the bad batting innings. This was bad bowling and batting.
And bad selections, bad team management by the folks who are running that organization in Sri Lanka. As I just simmer down a bit, I'm on the simmer. I got to the boiling point, now we're just on a simmer to try and bring things down a level. Did you have any observations from the game? Anything stand out to you? Aside from the historical shitness.
Yeah, well, I I haven't had my 50 cent bangers on, so hopefully I can keep this level-headed, but because it was pretty bad. It was just like nasty. But I think I don't know. I thought it started with the point you just made there about selection. I thought at that stage I was like, well, they had an opportunity to do something a little bit proactive and get out in front of what was a decent performance in the first test where they could have won, but ultimately a few things let them down. Okay, well, what do you do after that kind of test match performance? Well, surely you try to address the things that let you down so that you can win the next game. Instead, they just selected the same side. And I'm struggling really hard not to see that as a very, very, very symptomatic thing of what the entire situation has been, which is that word complacency again. And I don't know if maybe complacency isn't quite the right word, but it's something close to it. It's something that overlaps with that at least, because when pushed into a sort of semi-pressure situation where they had the chance to be proactive or to not be proactive, they chose to not be proactive. And they just seem to do this all the time at the moment. And there were times when, because in many ways, that was kind of the strength of this team when you got the sort of Hessen to Stead changeover, McCullum to Williamson changeover, when the Blackcaps kind of hit their peak, certainly as a Test cricket side, was that they didn't act first. They held back, they assessed information, and they made clever decisions based on that, whether that be pitch selections or pitch conditions or form selections or whatever it was, or just tactics from session to session. And like at the moment, like what worked 5 years ago just might the exact same approach just might not work anymore. Like, it might be that they've reached the shelf life of that. These teams are not like static things. They're constantly evolving, and what suited a previous incarnation of the Blackcaps might not suit this incarnation. And like, I don't know, but it's not just the team is the issue. This is why I think I think your point is quite valid about the old the whole New Zealand cricket culture has been of losing lately, because there's just they went to the T20 World Cup. The Blackcaps did. We'll see what the White Ferns do with their T20 World Cup coming up very soon. But the Blackcaps went to the T20 World Cup.
Just quickly,
yeah, go.
White Ferns, they're doing big things. They had a win. They had a win at the in the warm-ups of the T20 World Cup session.
They won the game that didn't count. That's even worse than the White Ferns sweep.
So shout out to the White Ferns. They did what they usually do in winning games that don't mean nada, as you were.
the less they win, the less they mean, the more they win. Uh, whereas like the it's like, well, because what were we talking about after the T20 World Cup was how bad the preparation had been from the Blackcaps. It's like, let's not play warm-up games. Let's allow everyone to turn up from their side gigs 2 days before or whatever it was, or just like staggered throughout the week prior. And admittedly, the Sri Lanka series, they did have a warm-up. It was a test match against Afghanistan and it got rained off. So that wasn't ideal. But they're still doing the same thing where it's just like I I don't know if it means enough, you know. I don't know if the event of a test match means enough. This isn't like a specific player to player situation. I mean, like from the top down, because they've apparently they're just returning home now for a little bit. Players are flying back to New Zealand and they're going back to India in a week or two to do that, which is in isolation, that's fine. But they're cutting not I don't know if cutting corners is right. It might be unfair to say cutting corners, but they're doing a lot to talk about players managing workloads, and it just feels like the way they do it is leaving the test match stuff to suffer so that guys can play T20 cricket as much as possible. And you're seeing some of the nursing stuff with contracts. And I haven't quite come around to how exactly I feel about this stuff, but it's information that I'm kind of gathering up. I think I do think this is like an organizational thing on down where the Black Caps Test squad is suffering from New Zealand cricket showing a level of malleability. I'm trying to think of what the right word is instead of complacency, because I don't think it's that. It's just I think they're being too accommodating and not treating the test matches as the sort of the next test match is your most important test match kind of thing. And this has affected the team in a bunch of different ways, because I think more specifically as far as the side goes, yeah, I think there are guys in there who feel like who have been allowed to feel, as this isn't their fault either, this is the way selections have been allowed to feel like their place in the side is pretty safe. And they went like this again. This is something that's worked for them in the past, is allowing guys to play through their form slumps and giving guys time to adjust to test match cricket. But there is a balance as well. Like they did have to drop Henry Nicholls at some point, and they were in a position here ahead of the second test where maybe a couple of guys ought to have been shielded from the pressure because they just weren't quite performing, and instead it was just what do we do? What decision should we make? Let's not make a decision again. Like let's do nothing and see what happens. And they did nothing, and they got a performance that was basically the sum total of nothing. So like, congratulations, you got what you asked for to some extent. I don't know if this will be seen as a crisis point in Black Caps Test history, the way that the 45 all out was, but I think maybe it should be, because these are not. This might be a culmination, but there were hints of this leading up for at least 12, maybe 24 months as well.
I think it is a crisis point, but again, you're going hyper focused on the Black Caps. But it's the whole picture, the whole vista, the whole view
you're right.
is in crisis. So yeah, like I understand what you're saying about the contracts in Test cricket, but that was shit at the T20 World Cup.
Yeah, the contracts is a small issue.
Yeah.
But if anything, it might be a symptom within a thing. But yeah, because what have the White Ferns done to address their trajectory is also nothing. Like, let's just keep doing the exact same thing and wait until it works. You know, it's not going to. And the Black Caps have got themselves into a situation as well. But yes, it's not a Black Cap specific issue. It's a top down kind of organizational thing. In theory, I guess.
But it's also not a Black Caps Test cricket thing. It's not a Black Caps. It's not a New Zealand cricket men's contract situation thing. It's the whole picture. It's Black Caps being shit at the T20 World Cup, Black Caps being shit at Test cricket, the management having, like, Devon Conway has a casual contract. He was graced with a casual contract, and there's no difference between Devon Conway and Henry Nicholls right now. Devon Conway is not a superstar. He just isn't. And that's what it is. But he's treated like a superstar. He's treated like he's the casual contract Kane Williamson next man up. But he's not. And it's what the thing I did enjoy about your spiel there was the White Ferns have literally done nothing. The White Ferns have been losing. I'm actually feeling a lot of similarities between what we're talking about here and what I want to talk about with the Broncos. Maybe I'll weave it in. But I don't want to put the grand final NRL stuff on the pedestal. But I will weave in some Broncos ideas. Well, not yet. Just yet, maybe. Because the White Ferns have been losing with two different coaches. And at neither point, like Bob Carter stepped down and he walked straight into a job in New Zealand cricket. He wasn't given the flick. He wasn't fired for being shit. He was promoted. He was kind of promoted within New Zealand cricket pathways. So you can't say that that New Zealand cricket reacted to poor White Ferns results by firing the coach. They didn't do that. They changed coaches and the White Ferns kept losing. So there's been, like, they haven't done anything. They, me, you, we've all seen the White Ferns just keep losing. To the point where they are in a 10-game losing streak. To the point where they are losing T20 series to Pakistan in New Zealand. And you've noticed the same thing with the Blackcaps. The Blackcaps just don't change anything. I want to just do a little separation between, because I think the squad selected was a good squad. And the one change the Blackcaps have had, the one change the White Ferns have had as well, although it didn't influence anything to do with the T20 World Cup, I don't believe. They changed their selector. Sarah Sukikawa, believe is the name off the top of my head, so I don't have it right in front of me. They changed selectors there. The Blackcaps, they did change their selector. And the one thing that Sam Wells has done, he's brought in a lot of new players to that Blackcaps team. And I agree with what Sam Wells has done as the chief selector because the best players for the Blackcaps are the new players he brought in. Will O'Rourke's the best seamer. Glenn Phillips is the best all-rounder. Rachin Ravindra is the best batter. Like, these are things that directly changed when Sam Wells started the job. But I don't think he's selecting the team test to test. I don't think he is influencing the skills, the tactics, the preparation. So I do think there's a difference there, and that is a positive wrinkle because the best Blackcaps right now are the new young players. So at least we've kind of got that. Like, I think that is nice. But ultimately, New Zealand cricket's just watching these teams be like shit, and they're not doing anything. And, like, it was... I genuinely thought it was crazy to select the same team. Like, there's no... Tim Southee's the captain, but as we've talked about, they've got captaincy by committee. We were prepared, me and you. It seemed like a lot of media folks weren't prepared, but we were prepared. Niche Cache listeners were prepared for Tim Southee to not play every test. There's no need for it. He's a seamer who bowls 130 k's per hour, and we're playing 6 tests in Asia. The Afghanistan test, you said it was a warm-up. It was not a warm-up. They could have lost that by the way they're playing right now. So credit to Afghanistan, no credit to the Indian groundskeepers. But Tim Southee, like, he isn't a certified first 11 player in these conditions. And it would have made complete sense for Tim Southee not to play this test. We talked about it on Thursday in our bonus subscriber podcast. We were talking about every change that could be made. How do you get Will Young into the team? How do you get Matt Henry, Ben Sears into the team? Is there something you can do with Michael Bracewell? I didn't expect all of those changes to be made. I thought there might be one change, maybe two changes, and there were no changes. So somehow we've settled on this observation that New Zealand cricket and the White Ferns and the Blackcaps, they don't make any changes even though they're losing. It's a very strange thing, but ultimately the thing that still irks me the most is this team just doesn't play like Kiwis. The fielding sucked. The tactics sucked. And I'm curious, what did you think about this? Like, there was they were rolled for 88, so that's terrible enough as it is. But then, especially in the second innings, you see a bit of the positive intent. And I see a very fine line between positive intent, which everyone loves. Everyone loves a bit of positive intent playing attacking cricket. Like, it's one of the biggest buzz terms in cricket right now. But it kind of just felt like the Blackcaps were reckless. It felt like the Blackcaps weren't good enough to absorb the pressure, so the only thing they could do was try to hit out. Like, Devon Conway and Kane Williamson, they're at the crease, they're doing well, and they just put up these catches for the fielders. There is, yes, positive intent is a thing. This Blackcaps test team, though, they have no, they're soft. I said it last week, they're soft. Because they can't grind through adversity. The opposition bowlers are bowling well. You can have a positive defensive shot. You can rotate the strike. You can turn ones into twos. You can be aggressive with your mindset without trying to smash boundaries. But the Blackcaps, they don't have that backbone. They don't have that foundation of grit, of Kiwi. I don't really know what this means, but the number 8 wire, whatever, that type of thing. Like, we're just going to fight through this. We're going to do what BJ Watling did. Probably still does, because he's a gritty bastard, and he's probably still doing it in whatever he's up to now. Like, can someone in the Blackcaps team just see out a good period of bowling? Can they fight for their country in a cricketing sense? No, they just want to hit boundaries. That is the most baffling thing. And to me, it felt like they went from positive intent into, we're not good enough, so we're going to try and hit out. Now, that's all right if you're Tim Southee batting. That's all right if you're Will O'Rourke batting. But to be honest, Ajaz Patel was the main dude who showed grit with his batting. Everyone else just decided, I'm not good enough, so I'm just going to have a whack. Oh, I can't play any defensive strokes, so I'm going to try reverse everything. Like, cool, you got some shots, but New Zealand needs a positive result. And unfortunately, the way the Blackcaps played their cricket wasn't a good representation of Aotearoa, and it was actually kind of, funnily enough, it summed up the losing identity of New Zealand cricket. Boy, I'm coming in hot. There's a lot of strong language there.
Well, I mean, the idea that they're heading out because they feel like they can't defend. I mean, there were 3 innings prior to that 4th innings, the second innings of the second tier. So 3 innings before that in this series, that kind of proved that was true. So I think they were kind of justified and being aggressive. But then, yeah, it was like, what are you being aggressive for is the thing. Like, have you got a bigger picture in mind? Because one thing that they struggled with, even when they scored a few runs in the first test, was like, battling through those periods of good bowling. And part of the way to do that is to not get yourself in those situations in the first place by keeping the pressure on the bowler, by being able to score runs, by turning the strike over, rotating things around, but also hitting boundaries here and there, punishing the bad ball. And there's a lot of that just was going a little bit astray at times, which is part of why they didn't capitalize, particularly first innings to the first test, where they should have got a much bigger lead than they did, and they didn't. Um, but like, yeah, when they started to get aggressive, it didn't feel like Tom Blundell, for example. I think it was because I think he did he get out reverse sweeping in the second innings when he got 50 odd.
No, the
Was that the
second
one where he
in.
was at LBW?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Because you said Tom, so I was thinking Tom Latham, and somehow the gritty opener wasn't very gritty in this test. But also, yeah, Tom Blundell did try to reverse sweep a full toss that hit him on the pads on the full, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the one. Because from memory, I might be getting this wrong, but from memory, I think he had reverse swept a really nice boundary right before that. So I don't want to pick on Tom Blundell because he's not the only one who did this. It's just his example springs to mind. It's like you've played that shot, you've hit it really well, you've cashed in. Why are you doing it again? What was the point of it? Was the point because I have to try hit every ball for four because that's the way you're acting if you keep playing that shot over and over, or is the point I want to show the bowler something different to take him off his line so that I can move him into a plan where I'm dictating things in this bowler to batter relationship rather than the other way around? Were you trying to move a fielder around, saying, okay, there's no third man. Well, if I play this shot, they might put a third man in and take him away from a catching position. And then I've got a little bit more safety, that kind of thing. Because they weren't batting like that. There were a couple instances, a couple guys that felt like maybe, but then it's just, yeah, because you can be playing the exact same shots, but with purpose of the bigger picture and how you're going to structure a long innings and intending to stay at the crease. I think Glenn Phillips actually did that all right when he was sticking around for a bit well, with Blundell actually in a little bit of a partnership in the last innings, but of course the game was long gone by then. But yeah, it's just they I don't want to say they were trying to catch the tea time at the local golf club or anything like that because it's too dismissive. But it did feel like they knew they'd lost, so well, let's at least try put some runs up. But then maybe that's not the innings because of that reason. They had lost, they had lost at that point. Maybe that's not the innings we should focus on. So I don't know. I thought I thought the positive intent was necessary, but I also thought they just didn't have balance with it, and they batted kind of shell shocked, and they probably deserve to be shell shocked after how they approached the first innings. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, at least with Latham, I can say his because the grittiest thing about his opening is how well he leaves the ball, but that's all like seamers with a new ball and the judgment he shows there. Here he's facing spinners with the new ball from the outset, and he should be more. But at least you can say it's a different situation to what he's used to. But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of all these things were just symptomatic from top to bottom. Like at one point, 'cause I agree. I thought AJ Patel was probably the grittiest batter in terms of how well he defended. And then you had situation at the end there where like Mitchell Santner is shielding him from the strike. It's like
He's
maybe
better
he
than
should
you.
be shielding you from the strike. He's the only one who seems to be able to play a fourth defensive against the spinners. So yeah, I don't know. It was just a disaster of a test match performance. And unfortunately, if they'd won that test match, then you say the first test was pretty good, didn't quite get there. They made adjustments in the second test. It makes the first test look quite good because it had the foundations of a victory. Instead, you had the first test now looks way worse than it was than what we would have felt about it a week ago because instead this had the foundations of one of the worst defeats that the Blackcaps have had in modern history. So there's some things to be sorted out, but I wonder if maybe they might decide the old tried and true strategy of doing nothing about it when it comes to pick a squad and go to India next, where they're going to face the same conditions but on cocaine.
Who's doing cocaine?
Sorry, the 50 Cent stuff.
Yeah, right.
Crack cocaine. Sorry.
Varieties cocaine.
Well,
I Like, yeah, Tom Latham's coming up against spin, but don't feel about, like, he doesn't seem as staunch against seam bowling these days either. And he was dismissed by Fernando in the second innings. He was Fernando's only wicket. In the first innings, sorry, when they were rolled for 88. So he did get out to a seamer in that innings. Your point about, like, this is the thing. Like, I feel like they might have been upset by Afghanistan. I'm thinking that might have been a possibility. But we're saved about that. They lose both tests in Sri Lanka.
I actually wish we'd seen that now, because, yeah, in light of what we saw afterwards, that would have been a really interesting test match.
India, they seem like they're just smoking Bangladesh. And you've got, so an interesting comparison is you had Jaiswal. He was going crazy last night. What did he finish up on? 72 at a strike rate of 141. First three batters for India, all strike rates over 100. Virat Kohli, 47, 134 strike rate. KL Rahul, strike rate 158. I only saw bits of Jaiswal's innings. He looked like a test batter who had positive intent. He was hitting good shots to the boundary. And he was hitting good shots over the boundary. If you take a test batter who's good enough to play test cricket and be one of the best batters in the world, and you give them an attacking mindset, they will play good strokes. But those strokes are coming out of the middle of the bat and they're going straight to the boundary. And there might be 2 or 3 of them in the over. The Blackcaps just felt like they were trying to hit out. And that's the icky thing. But then now, so they swept in Sri Lanka. They're going to India where, like, there's no way we can think they'll win a test. Like, there's no evidence right now to think that they will win a test. And
not much evidence they can knuckle down and get a draw either.
That's what I was going to get to. Like, they haven't shown any ability to fight to a draw either. So that's not looking good. Now, we do love to poke fun at England. And I'd love the Blackcaps to beat up India. I'd love the Blackcaps to beat up England. Like, nothing would make me happier. It's not going to happen. Like, because England, they don't have confidence issues. They don't have identity issues. England know who they are. They know exactly what they want to do. And they're led by a Kiwi. They're led by 2 Kiwis who are going to be coming to New Zealand. And they won a test in New Zealand last time. They only lost the second test by like 1 run. Like, England are not going to come to New Zealand and be timid. They're not going to come to New Zealand as underdogs. They're going to come to New Zealand with blood in the water. So yeah, it might be a cool period of test cricket. We've got 5, 3, 6, 9 tests to finish the year. Like, that's cool. Well, one of them's gone. We lost the first 2, and there's every chance they don't get a win in the next 6. Crikey Jack. The Women's T20 World Cup does start in the next week or so. New Zealand, the White Ferns, they're starting on Saturday morning against India. And then they've got the Wednesday morning against Australia. So by next Wednesday, barring a miracle, the T20 World Cup might be over for the White Ferns.